Okay, so what we have discussed so far, especially for the problem statement section, okay, the last couple of weeks, the previous week, okay, and I also required every group to submit your problem statement for discussion previously. And yesterday, as you have read from the WhatsApp, every group needs to update only provide only one title for your research project. And I may need everyone, so I put another deadline, okay, for every group to submit the first chapter. First chapter means the introduction section, which comprise of the background, problem statement, research question, objectives. Okay, because we are already in week number 5, okay, this week. So we need to get going quickly, okay, especially for the previous, the next couple of chapters, okay, chapter 2, literature review, and then chapter 3 on the theoretical framework and research method. Okay, so today is Monday, the 8th of November. So I will put the deadline by next following Sunday, the next week, this week Sunday, which is on the 21st, on the 14th of November. Okay, so the submission for the chapter 1 does not need to be 100% complete, meaning that the background of the study you can add later, meaning that what I need is maybe I will specify how many pages long for the chapter 1, especially for the background. Okay, because research question and research objective will be just a one-page section. Okay, the same with justification. So most of the part will come from the introduction, from the background of the study. Okay, because I cannot wait until the end of the semester and then I see the progress of the whole of your project. So it must be on a continuous basis, okay, from chapter 1 until you arrive at chapter 5. Of course, the final submission, okay, will be evaluated, okay, towards the end of the semester, because as you all know, we have a group presentation, sometime in week 11 or 12, okay. So time is moving very, very fast right now. So we need to get things done very quickly, okay. So in a week time, so I will expect every group to submit the chapter 1 of your thesis, of your research project. Okay, so what we have done so far is discussing on the highlighting on the problem statement, okay, whereby in the problem statement section, okay, the part that we have discussed previously, which is on how your problem statement should be laid out, okay, which consists of the 3 sections, okay, or the 3 paragraphs, minimum 3 paragraphs, okay. So this one, some of the groups, okay, the problem statement need to be revised, especially if you need to change the topic, as what I've suggested before. Okay, so the 3 paragraphs, okay, you don't need to follow exactly the 3 paragraph. The first paragraph this, but you can have like 4 or 5 paragraphs. Okay, for example, paragraph 1, you can divide into 2 sections. You can have 2 paragraphs for the first part, 2 paragraphs for the second part, the third paragraph, another maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs for the third part. Okay, so we already discussed what should be included in the problem statement. Okay, so this should be revised and in your chapter 1 section submission soon. Okay, and then so the next part after the problem statement, which is a continuation from the introduction or background of the study. Okay, so we already discussed this from general to specific. Okay, if your topic is about, let's say, about career choice among undergraduate, so you might want to start on a general perspective about the career choice in Malaysia or among in the world, and then you narrow down in the case of Malaysia, and then So there are plenty of examples you can find from the Google Drive, okay, the example of thesis. So go through them and see how you might want to start doing your background of the study, especially if you are following any thesis, okay, existing thesis for your project. So you might as well, refer to similar title or similar topic of the project and see how other students or other authors, okay, lay down their background of the study. Okay, so next, or for today, we're going to discuss on the research questions and also objectives of the study. So for this, okay, I will use a few theses from the collection of from the Google Drive. Okay, so one is the title number 1 and title number 2. Okay, and then another one will be title number 20, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and I think the other one will be let's see. I already made a video on this, so I do not want to spend too much time explaining this again, even though the video has not been uploaded yet. Okay, but I think one of the easiest part in chapter 1 will be the research question and also the research objective. Okay, so for the format of your research project, okay, you can use there are quite a number of theses from the Google Drive that you can follow in terms of the structure. Okay, and the thesis number 2 here, okay, is a good example how you want to lay down your chapter 1. Okay, introduction, background, problem statement, and then followed by the research question. Okay, and then objective. Some thesis I found that they put objective first, followed by research question, but which I think is not appropriate. So the correct format will be after the background of the study, okay, and then you continue by highlighting what is the problem statement, okay, limited to maximum 1 page or 2 pages long for your problem statement, because whatever that you want to discuss or highlight the issue must be done in the background of the study. So when you continue with the problem statement, basically you have highlighted already what are the general issues that you want to focus, okay? And then that's why the problem statement shouldn't be too long. Even though you may find some students have a very long problem statement, but the ideal one should be just around 1.5 page to 2 pages long. So that is what I require for every group. Okay, because the longer you write, it means that you have not justify or explain those issues in your background of the study. Okay, so that's why the problem statement shouldn't be too long. Okay, so after you have highlighted what is the main problem or what is the main issue that you want to focus in the problem statement, okay, the next part will be to continue from there and to justify, or you want to outline what are the questions that you want to answer in your research. Okay, because the nature of our subject BER3043 research method, okay, focuses primarily on primary data, meaning that the data collected from questionnaire. Okay, so when the data is collected from questionnaire, your research questions must be able to answer your research questions from the questionnaires that you have, meaning that the questions that you create or that you use in your questionnaire, okay, those questions, when the respondent answer them, okay, the answer that you provide, that you obtain, and followed by the analysis that you want to do using the questionnaires, should be able to be you must be able to answer all the questions that you outline in the research question. So for undergraduate level and also at master's level, usually the number of research questions will be maximum 3. Okay, even though you may find some master's thesis have 4 research questions, but I think I'm not sure why they have 4. It depends on the supervisor's role as well. But for me, 3 is more than enough. So I will require every group to have maximum of 3 research questions. Okay, which basically follow through from what you have highlighted from the problem statement. Okay, and if you are using or following some thesis, okay, some previous thesis from the Google Drive or any sources that you can find from the web, okay, from the internet, okay, you can use the same problem statement, or you might want to modify slightly, but do not change too much, because you may end up, especially if you are using similar questionnaires. So what is a research question? Okay, so, and how does your research question actually be an important part in your chapter 1? And how do you actually construct the sentences in the research question? So if you have gone through some of the examples of thesis, okay, in the web, in the Google Drive or any other sources, okay, usually the keyword here is the questions that you state, okay, must be measurable. Measurable means the question that you ask should be able to be answered using some statistical tool, because we are economic and agribusiness students. Okay, so you need to use the tools that you learn, for example, the hypothesis testing, okay, from your year 1, or if you're using secondary data, of course, our research uses primary data, but if you're using secondary data, then you might want to use regression, for example, the one that you learn in your basic econometric. Okay, but the keyword that when you go through some of the examples, okay, from the Google Scholar, you may find that most of the thesis, okay, when it comes to the research question, okay, the questions, the style of the question should be more or less similar in terms of the way the question is being formulated, because you do not want to use bombastic words that end up, okay, not that you cannot really understand what do you want to actually analyze. Okay, so if you look at this sample of 3 thesis, one is number 2, number 20, and number 28. Okay, the 28 is about the intention to purchase halal products. Okay, so let's go through the first one first. Okay, about this FDI topic. So what is the impact? Okay, so the keyword here is what is the impact. Okay, so what is the impact, meaning that usually the word impact is measured using regression. Okay, because this data rely on secondary data, okay, downloaded from websites, okay, report. Okay, so usually this is about the dependent and independent variables relationship X and Y, the one that you typically use in a regression. Okay, but if you're relying on primary data, okay, from questionnaire, okay, for example, like for this particular thesis about the entrepreneurial intention, okay, so the keyword here is there any is this variable related mean, is there any relationship? Okay, so basically this is about hypothesis testing. Okay, so is this variable related to this variable? Okay, or risk propensity related to entrepreneurial intent. So you can see that the word used is consistent throughout the 3 research questions, because you do not want to play around with the word too much. So you can use similar style of sentences, only changing the for example this. So the rest is the same about entrepreneurial intention. So the 1, 2, and 3 is about the 3 different factors, okay, that is connected to this entrepreneurial intention. The same with this halal topic. Okay, the keyword here is about differs, meaning that does intention to purchase halal differ between gender? Okay, and then the second one also, is there any differences? Or this is different style of writing. You can use differ or any differences, but the idea here is that the student want to test whether there is any differences between gender, ethnic group, and religion, and then followed by the other, the third and the fourth. Okay, because if you're doing a thesis or a project on intention to purchase online, intention to use halal, intention to do whatever lah, okay, to engage in entrepreneurial activity, Okay, project that evolve around the topic of intention. Usually the theory or the focus will be around this thing, the attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavior. So this is the focus of the item that need to be investigated when you want to analyze on the intention factor. Okay, so I think 3 and 4 should have been combined. Yeah, okay, but never mind. What I want to highlight is the way you construct your research questions. Okay, so the question must be straightforward and you can understand, and the wording used should be consistent for all the 3 research questions. Okay, so do not play around with the choice of word too much. Okay, especially if you are doing a topic that is very common, or you find 2 or 3 theses or journals doing the same topic as yours, as your group. So might as well just follow the similar structure. Okay, so that is research question, because what you want to ask actually must be connected to the problem statement that you highlighted before. If the problem that you want to highlight, okay, because whatever that you want to focus in that you already mentioned in the problem statement, why you want to invest, why is it important for you to investigate that particular issue. Okay, so those factor must be those issue must be whatever that you want to highlight in the problem statement must be reflected in the research question. And one thing that you cannot forget, okay, because the problem statement is very short, meaning that around 1 page long or 1.5 page long. Okay, especially in the second part or the second paragraph, this is where you want to justify why is it important for you to investigate the issue. Okay, why is it important? And if you do not investigate the problem, what are the consequences? What are the answers that you cannot get if you do not investigate the issue? So, for example, if many of the groups are focusing on the UUM student as the sample, for example, you are looking at the UUM student as your focus sample. So, meaning that if you want to investigate the issue from the UUM student perspective, okay, why is it important for you to actually, do the research focusing on among the UUM students? Okay, so that should be reflected somehow in the second part or the second paragraph in your problem statement. Okay, so but because problem statement is very short, okay, compared to what you have in the research question. Okay, so for example, this factor, if you look at this topic on entrepreneurial intention, okay, so the student wants to investigate the risk, achievement, and education. So of course, you cannot have all of these 3 factors mentioned in the problem statement, because problem statement is just highlighting the need to investigate entrepreneurial intention. Why is it important for the student actually to focus on the entrepreneurial intention? But you cannot expect all of these factors to be mentioned in the problem statement, taking risk taking, achievement, and education. So this is where the background of the study in chapter 1, item 1.2, okay, in the background section just now. Okay, when you begin your thesis with the background section, okay, so in the background section of your thesis, okay, after in item 1.2, correct, okay, in the background of the study, okay, in the background of the study, where you want to provide as much background to the issue that you are investigating. So when you are writing the background, you need to provide enough information about the issue that you are investigating. So if you're talking about this entrepreneurial intention, okay, so in the background section, you need to actually highlight the importance of the role of, why is it important for students to be involved in entrepreneurial activities, for graduates to not to rely on job interview, whatever. So meaning that why students need to involve in business, for example. So those need to be highlighted in the background. So, and this item here, risk-taking, the need for achievement, education, these factors must be mentioned in the background as well, meaning that when you write your background of the study, you need to mention the role of these factors in promoting entrepreneurial intention. Because when you ask this question in the research question, this is not the first time we see this word here, education. I mean, you must mention somewhere in the background about how education actually can promote entrepreneurial intention, how the need for achievement. So this is where you need to actually, if you remember from the previous video on the background of the study, okay, background of the study, you can also refer or use several, several theses or journals to highlight what people have done before on this particular topic. So you might want to highlight how this variable, okay, risk-taking is important to promote entrepreneurial intention. Okay, so when you write down your research question, whatever variable, for example, like this one, the halal products, okay, the intention to use halal product. So the student want to investigate the different, whether genders, ethnic group, religion, and these other factors here, subjective norm, perceived behavioral, how are these factors actually connected or can influence the intention to purchase halal products. So when you want to investigate these particular factors on halal products, you must mention somewhere in the background how genders, okay, ethnic groups, okay, subjective norm, attitude can have any influence on intention to purchase halal products. So meaning that where do you want to mention this? In the background. How do you want to mention that? Okay, these factors, you can use previous studies, okay, previous articles, previous journals. For example, according to Mr. X, according to XYZ, okay, they found that blah, blah, blah lah. Okay, so meaning that when you go through the any thesis, okay, you will see that many in a good thesis will have, okay, enough information, including referring to previous studies. Okay, for example, anything in bracket here, for example, so the student refers to this particular paper. Okay, so this is what I mean. Okay, you can refer to previous studies, okay, and justify and just to highlight the role of certain variable in promoting FDI. So in your case, okay, if you're doing something on the halal product, for example, so you might want to, mention how previous authors, okay, how previous studies have found that the ethnic, okay, groups, genders can actually affect the intention to purchase halal products. Okay, so this is where you need to mention some of the factors that you want to analyze in your research question. Okay, later in this particular section 1.3. So you cannot mention this factor suddenly, meaning that the word gender must at least appear somewhere in the background. So when you want to investigate this factor, at least we have already get some overview, meaning some background, some introduction lah, meaning that in the introduction section you already mentioned, maybe not much, at least 1 or 2 paragraphs, okay, in your background of the study should contain some of the variables or all of the variables that you want to investigate. Meaning that for this particular topic, you must mention how previous study has found that genders, okay, ethnic groups, religion, and other factors like subjective norms can actually affect intention to purchase halal products. Okay, the same thing here. Okay, so this is how you actually write your problem statement. So that's why it must be a continuous flow from your introduction, okay, until you reach your problem, until you reach your research question. Okay, so it cannot be disconnected. Okay, so whatever issues that you want to highlight or you want to focus in your research question, if you got 3 questions to ask and to answer, okay, the variable that you want to measure, okay, whether you are, doing any particular topic, okay, So the factors or the variable must appear somewhere in your background first. So this is what I want to see in your background of the study, okay, for your project. So I'm looking for this. So if you are asking these questions, so I'll be looking on where do you mention these particular factors, okay, in the background, okay, by using previous studies, okay. So you can this is where you need to read, okay, read as many theses as possible, so that you can see how students actually write their background and how they actually refer to previous study or previous journal, okay, about the factors that they want to highlight or they want to investigate in the research questions, and how these factors actually mentioned earlier in the background of the study. So that is the research question. Okay, so after you have finished your research question, so let's say just now I mentioned maximum 3, okay, meaning that every group should have 3 research questions. Okay, so after you have highlighted or write down your 3 research questions, the next part will be the easier one, which is the research objective. Okay, so it's a continuous, so research question is in the form of question mark, meaning that in the form of question lah. What is, okay, is there any relationship, okay, does intention, so the wording must in the form of question, okay. But then when you write down your research objective, okay, if you have 4 research, I mean in this particular thesis the student have 4 lah, okay, but as I mentioned you only need 3. So if you got 3 research questions, you must have exactly 3 research objectives. Okay, but for this particular student, it's a bit strange. As I mentioned, the research objective appear first. Okay, but this is not the format that I want you to follow. It must be research question first, okay, followed by objective of the study. So the sequence must be the same. The first research question should be the first research objective. Okay, and so forth lah. The second research question will be the second research objective, and the third research question will be the third research objective, and the wording for research for objective will be similarly done, meaning that it must be consistent. And usually, the word to examine, to investigate, so this is the word that the student choose. Okay, and you can see that every sentence starts with the word to examine, to examine. Okay, for this particular student, the student use the word to examine as well. So you can repeat the same style of sentence, but the main thing to remember is that the sequence must be the same lah. Number 1, number 2, number 3 in your research question must appear as number 1, number 2, number 3 in your research objective. Okay, so in this particular student, research question number 1 is risk-taking propensity related to entrepreneurial intention. So the student changed this to examine the relationship between risk-taking and this. To examine the relationship between this and this. Okay, so once you have written your research question, the research objective will be a very easy task to do. Meaning that you just change the wording lah, and just to make sure, okay, just to for everyone to remember, be consistent in the choice of word. Do not try to be too bombastic or too creative in your choice of word. You can use the similar wording for all the research objective. Okay, so that is the part which I actually explained in the previous video which I recorded recently, but I did not upload them because for some reason the audio quality isn't that good. Okay, so once you have done your research objective, okay, the last few details in the chapter 1 will be, if you go through several theses, then you should know that the standard thesis or a project should have the limit, the contribution, or you should have this part here which is known as justification and contribution of the study, scope of the study, plan of the study, summary of the chapter. But okay, but for your project, what I need is mainly this one, the contribution, and the scope of the study. Okay, so plan of the study is just, I think, the outline of your chapter. Okay, you can go through some of the master's thesis. Okay, some thesis they have these key terms which I do not need. Okay, and you don't need these key terms here. So what you need is just okay, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Okay, and then justification, and especially this one, the contribution of the study, and then the scope of the study. The scope is very simple, because if your focus of the study is using UEM student, so that will be the focus or the scope of the study lah. Okay, so if you see some student have these like key terms, no need to have this one lah. Okay, organization of the study is similar to this one. I think plan of the study, meaning how you want to outline your chapter. Chapter 1 is about what, chapter 2 is about what. So this is, I think, very common, very simple to do. Okay, so usually student, and this the student she only, or the student only has this organization. Okay, but the student don't even have this this one, significance of the study. Okay, or contribution of the study. So you can use significance of the study or contribution of the study. So this basically is similar to your problem statement just now. If you recall just now, in your problem statement, especially in paragraph 3 or the last one or two paragraph, you need to highlight who will benefit from your study. But in problem statement, it will be very short, maybe one or two maybe just one sentence or two sentences. Okay, meaning that if you are who will benefit from your research, if you are investigating an issue on for example the cost of living, among the B40 group of people. So by doing that particular research, who will benefit from your study? Okay, so basically the contribution of the study or the significance of the study is expanding the paragraph 3 section. Okay, meaning that significance of the study is how does your study be beneficial to whether to the theory or to the management of the university, to the academic department. If you're focusing on UUM, for example, or the SAFB, if your study only focuses on the SAFB students, so of course the finding is not only useful for the SAFB but also for the UUM. Okay, especially for which department, the department of student, the HEP, or is it useful for the academic department, the HEA, depending on where you think your study will be. The findings of your study can actually contribute. But of course, if you are referring to any study or any thesis, okay, so you can refer to them to that, but of course you need to modify lah, because if your focus is on UEM, you need to reflect that here in the significance of the study. Okay, so you can refer to some other thesis and change them according to the scope of your study lah. Okay, so what is required is 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Okay, contribution or the significance of the study, like this one. Okay, and then the scope. Okay, the scope of the study may be one or two lines only, meaning that the scope of the study is focusing on the UUM SAMB student, for example. So you can refer to some other thesis, see how they actually explain the scope of the study. Okay, plan of the study is basically organization of your chapter here. Okay, which is chapter 1 is about what, chapter 2 is about what. Okay, overall there are 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is about introduction, and chapter 2. And so this is again a very simple thing to do. Okay, chapter 3 is about the method, chapter 4 is about findings, chapter 5 is about conclusion. So basically this is just the outline of the things to come. How do you want to organize your thesis? So basically this is very similar. Many theses you are just following the structure, but of course depending on the topic. Okay, you cannot simply copy and paste and because chapter 2 is about how you write down your literature review based on the topic of your choice. Okay, and then what is the method that you will use? Okay, I mean, chapter 3 is about the method, chapter 4 is about findings. So I think this is a very common part, okay, in any chapter 1. Okay, I mean, so in your chapter 1, make sure that you have 1.1 until 1.8, okay, objective, contribution or significance of the study, okay, scope of the study, okay. If you look at this particular, so some thesis do not have the scope of the study, some thesis has, okay, like this one, okay, no need to have this. So some thesis have different format, like this one is a bit strange. The student even have this, yeah, this one, like significance, yes, you can follow, okay, but no need to, I mean, depend, you can put numbering if you want to, okay, but for example, you don't need to have hypothesis in your chapter 1, okay, or even like this table, okay, theoretical framework shouldn't be in chapter 1 actually. I'm not sure why the student put this in chapter 1. So that's why I'm mentioning here right now. Okay, I do not want any one of you to actually keep confusing or ask me question, what format should you follow? Okay, so I'm showing this particular screen here so that you just follow this outline. Okay, for chapter 1. Okay, research question, objective, and then contribution or significance of the study. Okay, and then scope of the study, and then plan or organization of the study. Okay, so for example, like this one, the student use organization of the study. Okay, and then no need to have summary of the chapter lah, just plan, just until 1.8. Okay, so 1.9 is not needed. Okay, so that is what is required for your chapter 1, the draft of your chapter 1 lah. Okay, so 1.1 until 1.8. Okay, so this part, okay, just contribution or significance of the study, scope of the study. So you can find example how the student actually write scope of the study, but the main focus is just, if your study focuses on graduates, okay, graduates among graduates in Malaysia, then it will be, the scope of the study will be graduates of Malaysia lah. But of course, I think for most students, I think the focus will be around UUM students. Okay, then you just need to mention the scope of the study will focus among UUM COB student or UUM SAB student or UUM students overall. Okay, so that will be the scope of the study. So the main part that I'm looking forward is this background part, background of the study. Okay, and also again your revised problem statement and research questions and also the research objective. Okay, so you need to have, but of course when you submit by end of this week, I do not expect that that will be your final version, but at least I want to see that you have some idea what do you want to do actually for your particular project. Okay, so you may expand or write more later, okay, because you still have a lot of time, around 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks to go. Okay, but I cannot let you do this towards the end of the semester, then you end up doing it wrong. So at least when you submit chapter by chapter basis, okay, so at least I know that you are on the right track to actually complete your project, especially for the presentation purpose. Okay, so yeah, so I will specify how many pages, okay, especially for the background. Okay, what is the minimum number of pages that I expect for you to have this week, okay, for this background, and you can expand more towards, as time goes by lah, I mean, as the semester progress. Okay, so that is for the background and research question and research objective. Okay, so next will be on the literature review. Okay, so how do you do literature review? Why is it chapter 2 we have a dedicated chapter 2 for literature review? What does literature review serve? Okay, or what is the purpose of having a literature review in your thesis? Okay, and how do you actually divide or construct your literature review? Okay, so when I'm using this particular thesis again on this FDI thing because I think the outline is very nicely done. I mean, it's very simple to follow. Okay, so before we go through in detail about what is literature review, just take a look at this particular thesis again. Okay, and then literature review basically is not just a collection of summary meaning you are summarizing what other people have done in the I mean on the topic that you are currently researching. If you are doing on this particular topic, for example, the student is doing on FDI, so this part here 2.3 empirical studies. So what the student have done is the student is summarizing, okay, the making summary of as many articles as possible that are looking at the issues or the research questions that the student are investigating. Okay, because for example, if you are doing regression, okay, regression means that there are many variables that the student are looking at, okay, between X and Y. So the student wants to needs to summarize what other people have found on the relationship between FDI and currency, FDI and economic growth, foreign debt and economic growth. As long as the summary of the articles can actually contribute to the understanding of the issue that you are doing. You cannot simply take one article and summarize that article in one paragraph, which does not actually relate to your work. Okay, so that's why just now when we go through the background of the study and then how your background must be connected to your research question. Okay, remember just now when I mentioned that whatever that you want to ask in your research question, okay, for example, risk taking, the need for achievement, entrepreneurship, education, these factors, education, risk taking, you must mention somewhere in your background, meaning that when you write your introduction, you can actually start referring to previous study, but not too detailed because the more detail must be provided in chapter 2. Okay, so if you go through, for example, this particular thesis here, so in the background, even in the introduction, the student has actually start to refer to some studies, okay, to some studies about the I mean about the topic lah, meaning on FDI and the factors. Okay, and then these factors, these authors, Bhagwati, Ghazali, Huang, the student can actually repeat or mention these authors again in the literature review, meaning that in the chapter 2, the student can actually explain more what each of the articles actually about. Okay, in the introduction, it will just be a very brief summary. Okay, meaning that when the student highlight that this sentence actually is referring to the findings of these people. Okay, but in the literature review, the student can actually provide more detail. Okay, what Ghazali 2010 study is about. Okay, what Rashdi and Saidi 2011 article is about, and so forth. Okay, so the introduction is that's why we call it introduction or background. Just a brief, very short summary of what other people have done, just to provide some introduction, okay, some evidence that yes, there are people have looked at these particular factors, and these are the main findings. Okay, but then when you go into more detail in chapter 2, that is what we call the literature review. Okay, so the word review means you are doing the summary of what other people have done. Okay, but for undergraduate level, okay, of course, I do not expect, you have a very good or very detailed literature review. But as long as you know what literature review is, okay, because the purpose of having this subject, okay, research method, is that when you write your own project in the semester 7 for thesis, especially for economic student, okay, when you have your thesis project in semester 7, so you need to write the same format, meaning chapter 1, chapter 2 until chapter 5. So your literature review must contain at least the basic components or the basic ingredient lah, what we expect a literature review to have. Okay, of course there are difference between good student, average student, and poor students. Okay, how they write their literature review. But a good literature review should contain these two components. One is the theory, the other one is the empirical. Okay, so this is a good literature review, meaning that the word theoretical background is that you want to provide, depending on the topic that you do. Okay, let's look at this particular student here. Okay, go through the chapter 2 here. Okay, so in this, this is about this entrepreneurial intention. Okay, you can see that the student, okay, definition and conceptualization of variables. So the student goes by defining the term and who actually have done study on this. Basically, this you can see here underpinning theory, okay, development. So it depends. I mean, there is no one standard format for chapter 2. Okay, but when you go through the as many literature review as possible from the thesis. Okay, so you can see that the for example, like this one. Okay, so the student does not why I like this, because this is a more organized way to actually write down your literature review, meaning you can have a section on theory, meaning that what are the theory, because when you write an academic paper is not like a newspaper article. Okay, a newspaper article or a magazine article or a blog article, that one does not require you to have a theory. Okay, but when you write academic project, okay, academic paper, a journal, a conference paper, a thesis, okay, we need to have a section that mention about how the theory actually explain the topic that you are doing. So the section on theory is a must. This is a compulsory section in your literature review, because you cannot have an academic project, a thesis, without a theoretical section. Okay, theoretical mean, for example, when you learn principle of economics or microeconomics, you learn about the theory of demand and supply. When price goes up, you expect quantity to fall, and vice versa. So that is the basic theory. And then you put the theory to test. You take some data, you take data on demand, and the price and quantity, and then you want to see whether what the theory says, is it the same as in the real world? Okay, because when you plot the demand and supply, the demand curve you expect to be downward sloping, supply curve should be upward sloping. This is the theory, what the theory says. Okay, meaning that the relationship between price and quantity should be negative for demand, positive for supply. Okay, so this is what theory says. So you need to mention that particular theory in the theoretical background, depending on the topic that you are doing lah. Okay, so this is where you actually see how students actually put down the theory. Okay, or explain the theory that is related to the particular issue that you are doing. Okay, I cannot say that you need to follow this format or this format, but for me, I like this format better, meaning that you have one section on theory, what the theory says about the relationship between about the issue that you want to investigate. Okay, and then the second part of your chapter 2 will be on the empirical studies. Empirical studies mean you are summarizing as many articles as possible that have looked at your particular issue. Meaning that if you're doing, for example, on this entrepreneurial intention, so I'm sure there are more than 20 or 30 journals, okay, or articles related to this similar topic of yours. So that is where you want to put in the empirical studies. Okay, on this item 2.3. Okay, so 2.2 is basically what the theory says. So you can use textbook, okay, buku text, okay, or usually this come from textbook, okay, or if you're referring to any journal or any thesis, so you can use that particular thesis punya theory lah, or where does the theory comes from. Okay, so this is a very important part, okay, in a thesis, okay, the theory. Okay, because without theory, your writing becomes just like a newspaper article, meaning that you are just taking some data and testing the data, but there is no theory to actually support your findings. So that's why it is important that you need to have a theoretical section in your chapter 2. Okay, so I cannot say for sure what is the exact theory that you need to do, because each group has your own topic. Okay, so yeah, so the theoretical background, okay, so you need to go through the thesis that you are referring to, okay, and see how the student, okay, actually outline the theory, okay, because other students have different style of writing, but I would like you to use this particular structure, meaning that you first start with the theory and outline what are the theories used. So of course, this is a PhD thesis, okay, which I don't expect you to have a very detailed discussion. For example, this particular student, chapter 2, comprised of almost 100 page long. Okay, but for your project, maybe just a few, maybe around, 10 pages, 20 pages long maximum. Okay, so, but you need to divide between the theory and also the empirical studies. Okay, so this is what I want to begin with on what is literature review. Literature review is a review of theory and also a review of evidence from past studies. Okay, so a review of theory is the first part of the literature review. A review of previous studies, meaning that you find articles from the journal, from the Google Scholar, okay, or when you read, thesis 1, thesis 2, thesis 3, whatever thesis that you read, okay, usually literature review is not based on thesis, it's based on journal, because thesis is not, because there are not many published thesis where you can actually get the thesis online. But when you go through the Google Scholar, you type the topic that you want to do, 99% of the time, it will be in the form of journal articles, okay, or conference paper, not master's thesis or PhD thesis. So what I can say that empirical studies here is a summary of journal articles, okay, that is related to your topic. So you might want, so you can use the thesis or the journal that you are referring to for your project and see how the student actually organize the empirical study section. Okay, so different student has different way. For example, for this particular student on this halal thing, so the student actually divide the topic according to the factor intention to purchase, attitude. So these are the summary of the. So when you go through each of the item here, you can see, for example, page 18. Okay, chapter 2. Okay, so the first part, the student begins by defining the concept. Okay, and then each of the factor, for example, on this halal certification. So whenever you see part like this, Mian 2010, so this is what we mean by literature review. Okay, so the student summarizes or uses journal articles to actually mention what halal certification is about. Okay, and then so this is a literature review section. Okay, of course, different school, because this is not from economics department, I think. So maybe the style of writing will be slightly different. Okay, so intention to purchase. So this is one factor under the paradigm or under the scope of intention. So for each of the intention, the student will refer to what studies have done that actually mentioned on this intention to purchase. Attitude, what are the articles or journals that have focused or mentioned on this attitude, and the list goes on lah. Okay, so of course I cannot go through every single journal or thesis in the Google Scholar. Okay, so that is your role actually to read. Okay, so but my part is actually to explain to you how to find articles, how to cite properly, how to rujuk or how to write the citation, okay, in your thesis properly. Because in my experience, okay, do you write the full name or do you only write the surname? How do you write the year, whether in bracket, okay, or if you write, for example, like this, okay, so there are different style of writing. So I will show you those different style of writing in the literature review, so that when you write your own project, you don't simply write your own problem literature review your own way. Okay, there is a standard style of writing literature review, especially in the citation. Okay, the year. Okay, and then for example, et al. What does et al. Means? Okay, so how do you decide to use et al. Or not? Okay, so that is the thing that you need to follow. And usually we are using the APA. Okay, APA, the format for our reference. Okay, so because literature review has a lot to do with the reference styling. Towards the end of your thesis, okay, you will have this reference section here. So all of the articles that you refer to, okay, especially in your literature review, will appear in the reference section. Okay, so this is again one part that I need to mention lah. Okay, that I need to show how you, whatever articles that you refer to in the literature review, okay, will appear in the references section towards the end of your thesis. Okay, so you need to actually know how to properly cite the paper. So Google Scholar has an automatic way to actually generate the reference for you according to the format that we use, the APA format. Okay, so that is also another skill that I will teach you maybe on this coming Thursday. Okay, but for the time being, okay, so literature review, okay, must comprise of two. Okay, one is the discussion of theory, which mainly may come from textbook or any thesis or any journal that you read that has a specific section on theory. Okay, but some journal does not have a theoretical section. Some has. Okay, because it depends on the length of the journal article, because journal article is quite short. So that's why sometimes you need to refer to textbook or any some good journals, okay, journal that does have a theoretical section. Okay, so this is where you're reading your whatever articles that you download, okay, for your own project. Okay, you need to look for journal articles that has a theoretical section, okay, in the article, so that it will help you to write your theoretical background in chapter 2. Okay, and then the next part will be the empirical part, meaning that you summarize what other people have done according to the issue that you are looking at. Okay, so at the end of the day, okay, when you write your empirical studies, okay, this must be related to your chapter 1 as well. If you recall just now, in your chapter 1, you have your research questions. Okay, correct. You have your research question. If you got 3 research questions, okay, so that it is very good that if you can actually mention how if you can explain your chapter 2, your literature review, according to the research questions that you have. For example, like for this particular student, remember, the student have 4, okay, research questions about gender, ethnic groups, religion, and these other factors, okay, attitude, subjective norm, behavior. And for this particular student on this entrepreneurial intention, okay, so the student has 3 research questions, correct? Okay, number 1 is to about risk-taking, achievement, education. So you can see that each of these factors, okay, there must be some articles or journals that actually explain how education is related to entrepreneurial intention, how achievement is related to entrepreneurial intention, how risk-taking is also related to entrepreneurial intention. So each of these factors must appear in your empirical study section here, meaning that you can have one item, for example, 2.3.1, 2.3.1, it can be risk-taking and entrepreneurial intention. 2.3.2, it can be achievement and entrepreneurial intention. Okay, and 2.3.3, it can be education and entrepreneurial intention. So the idea is that you can find as many articles that mention how risk-taking is related to entrepreneurial intention according to Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z. Okay, and then followed by the second factor, because you want your empirical study to be consistent with what you want to ask in 1.4 and also 1.5 in your objective. Okay, because then when I read your literature review, I can see the continuity, okay, from what you want to investigate, because whatever that you want to ask here in your research question, okay, why you want to ask this question? Because based on previous studies, based on previous journals, people have looked at these particular factors. So this is where, because you do not simply ask question without having any contoh or evidence from previous articles. Okay, so I'm sure each of the question that you want to ask, there should be some evidence, okay, from the previous articles, previous journal that have looked at this particular issue. Okay, so this is where I want the sequence to appear similarly in your chapter 2. Okay, not in the theory, but especially in the empirical part, meaning that if you got 3 research questions, so you can have 3 factors, 3 items under the empirical study that will follow how you write down your research question. This is one of the style, okay, not the only way, okay, but it will be more easier for me and also for you to follow, because why you are asking the question, because it is already been discussed in some studies, okay, about how this variable, okay, risk-taking is connected to entrepreneurial intention. Okay, the same goes with this one. How gender, okay, according to whom? Okay, according to Mr. X, gender does affect intention to purchase halal products. According to Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, okay, and then according to Mr. ABC, ethnic groups also can influence halal products intention to purchase halal products, and the list goes on. So whatever that you ask in the research question, okay, it is better for you to reflect that or to have the same item or the same sequence here in the empirical studies. Okay, so for example, in this part here for intention to purchase, so ethnic, gender and halal products intention, so it can be genders and intention to purchase halal products. And then here 2.3.2, it can be apa tu tadi tu? It can be ethnic group and religion. So ethnic group and religion and intention to purchase. Okay, because this particular student is focusing on FDI, so that's why it starts with FDI, foreign debt. So these are the issues that the student actually investigate in the thesis. Okay, so basically this is reflected or must be consistent with the research questions. Okay, so of course, if you go further into master or PhD, okay, the level of discussion is more detailed. Okay, but at your level, okay, to make things simple, okay, whatever that you ask in your research questions, so that is what I expect you to have the items or the breakdown in the items in your chapter 2, okay, under empirical studies. Okay, under theoretical background, it depends on what theory that is used to explain the relationship between your study lah. For example, on this topic of entrepreneurial entrepreneurial intention, what are the theory used to actually justify how entrepreneurial intention are related to the to the issue that you are looking at. So this is can be based from the thesis that you read, okay, from textbook or whatever lah, sources. Okay, so but this is a must, okay, and this is also a must. So there must be 2 components. okay, that must that you need to construct or have in your literature review. Okay, so I will leave it as it is for today. Okay, so I will discuss more on this coming Thursday. Okay, on literature review. Okay, and maybe I will first, I think I will show you how to get articles from Google Scholar. Okay, and then how to uh, properly cite. Okay, because I think when you got one or two theses or journal articles that you want to follow or closely for your project, so I'm sure that particular thesis has already got this particular section, but you need to modify them according to the style that I mentioned just now. Okay, so empirical, so follow thesis number 2 here in terms of the structure. One is the theory, second part is the empirical study. And the empirical should follow the research questions that you highlighted previously in chapter 1. Okay. So other than that, I think, okay, check your online, your OL, okay, for the deadline, for the requirement for chapter 1. Okay, the focus is mainly on the background of the study and also the problem statement and also the research questions. Okay, the rest, I think, is just a very short section, okay, on the justification, the scope of the study. Okay, but it does not need to be the final version. Okay, I just need, this is like a first draft of your chapter 1. Okay, you can continue expanding. So I think I will specify how many pages required, especially for the background. Okay, problem statement, you already know, it should be around 1 page or 1.5 page long only. Shouldn't be too long. Okay, but for the background, I will specify that in your introduction or background of the study, how many pages I expect to have at least by this weekend. Okay, so at least I can see that you are on the right track of doing your project lah. Okay, any other questions before we end our session?